Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the State Champ Studio. Elizabeth Coon here with Emma Kuehl on the farm. We're so excited to have you. Hey, playoffs continue. We're super excited. Do you have any first thoughts on some of the matchups that have happened so far?
Yep, I may be in Virginia right now visiting my family, but I am following it closely. It is certainly an exciting time for Michigan girls lacrosse. So, I think what we're seeing is kind of some of the standard high scoring games, from some of our stronger teams who are playing in the early rounds, who did not get a bye. But there have been a few close games that are exciting, and again, I think it means the parity is really increasing for our sport, which is really exciting. One that really sticks out in my mind is Forest Hills Northern 14 over Portage Northern 11. Forest Hills Northern Eastern, I think they're having a little bit of a tougher time in the second half of their season, but I think Portage has really grown as a program. So to me, that's a really exciting score line. And something that Portage can look to grow on. They've had a really great season this year, so really good stuff happening with that program, and it's great for Michigan girls lacrosse as a whole.
Yeah, absolutely. Another close one that we saw, Okemos, they took on Swartz Creek, and Okemos got the win 8-5. Talk about this Okemos team. They're really able to go out there when it all counts, a lot's on the line, and go out and get the win.
Yeah, Okemos is just traditionally a really great athletic team. They pull from a really good pool of athletes out there. So really, really great game for them. A solid win. I do think that they're in a little bit of a rebuilding phase right now from, some earlier years. But a win is a win, and we'll take that, especially in playoff time. So, just a great, great win over a tough Swartz Creek team. And I look forward to watching their progress as they make their way through the postseason.
Yeah, absolutely. Okemos, they're going to be moving on to play the winner of East Lansing and DeWitt, which is happening tonight. What do you want to see moving forward in that matchup and with this Okemos team, moving even further forward?
Yeah, I think either DeWitt or East Lansing, whoever comes out of that game, it's going to be a pretty big challenge for Okemos. So I think, just trying to stick to the game plan and making the most of the opportunity that's given to them. But, I think DeWitt and East Lansing is going to be a great matchup. It was only a 3-goal game in the regular season. So I really think it's a toss-up at this point. Looking forward to seeing who comes out of that group. I think DeWitt has a really strong bench and a really, a big team with a lot of talented depth. So I think they have the slight edge. But again, it's postseason, it's tournament time, and as we know, anything can happen.
Yeah, absolutely. That's what makes it so exciting. Moving on to Hudsonville, they took on Rockford, and kind of like you mentioned before, a really big win by Rockford. They took it 20-4. This powerhouse of a team, just talk about this group.
Yeah, again, I think Rockford had a slower start to the season, but they're figuring it out now when it matters, which is kind of, the most important part. But a solid win to start their campaign. And also when we're seeing these big scores from, these kind of programs that have been around for a while, kind of in that top 10, it means that they're able to rest a lot of their players too. So, when you have a healthy scoring line, you're able to get some girls in who, it's great for them to get that experience in a regional game. And you're able to rest your starting units, which is awesome for kind of the longer run that you hope for in the postseason. So a great win, their starting unit went out and got the job done, and the depth off of their bench really supported in that game. So a solid start to the postseason for Rockford.
Yeah, absolutely. And they're going to be moving on to play Granville next week. What are you really thinking for this matchup and this Rockford squad?
I think Granville is still a program that's developing. So I think Rockford has a big advantage in that game. And I think what Rockford is doing right now is, again, figuring out their way into the postseason. That's going to get them into that final that they're seeking. Again, they had that slower start, but Rockford's been picking it up. So, a contender as we head into the, regional semifinals, finals, and then finally into the state tournament.
Yeah, and what do you think, coming off of such a big win against a team, does that give you a lot of momentum, a lot of energy moving forward, or what kind of energy, what does that really bring, heading into the playoffs?
I think it does. And as coaches will say, the cliche, a win is a win.
Mhm.
I think it's really great for the team as a whole. Rockford has had a lot of close games, which, you're probably not getting your third or your fourth string in, and they have a pretty deep bench. So,
Mhm.
it's really great for the team as a whole to get some experience for, either the younger players or the players who might, need that experience to get where they want to be on the field. A big win is a big win, and we'll take that as a coaching staff. And again, it gives us an opportunity to rest some players. So, I think it's postseason. The girls are locked in and they want to win. They want to
Mhm.
compete. So they're going for it.
Absolutely. It makes it so exciting. Hey, we got to sit down with Hazlitt head coach. Super excited. He's been having a great season. Those girls have been having a great season so far. So let's check out that sit down interview we got to do with him. Hello, everyone. We are joined now with the Hazlitt head coach, Coach Chad Pastor. Thank you so much for taking some time to chat with us today.
Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, absolutely. You guys having a great season, 17-3, and just coming off a really big regional win against Flushing. Can you just kind of walk me through what this year and what this season has really looked like?
Yeah, I think this year's been a little bit of a continuation of last season. We spent a lot of time trying to build up the squad to be prepared to make a good deep run into the playoffs. So I think this year's been really trying to build on that. We had a lot of great seniors that graduated the previous year. We had to do some replacements on the offensive side, but defensively, we return a great group of people. So we have 4 seniors on that defensive side of the ball. So it's really been trying to work them to prepare to take care of business in the conference. That's one of our first priorities for those goals. And working from there, it's trying to schedule great teams so we're totally prepared to come into the playoff season and play a strong season.
Yeah, and I mean, you've been at Hazlitt since 2019, really coming in and just building a winning culture here. Like you mentioned, you guys coming off of a state semifinal appearance last year. What does it take for this team and this group to get to that point and even beyond?
I think that's a great question. I think culture is the first thing that comes forward that you really have to adjust and make a difference with. The girls that we had when I came to Hazlitt, we had just as many athletes as all the other schools in the area. We just didn't quite have that winning culture in place. So we really spent a lot of time trying to break that down with the players and rebuild just a solid foundation for them to make them better humans, make them better teammates, and ultimately make them better players. Getting them used to what adversity looks like and how to deal with those tough situations was key. I think that's one of those areas for that culture side of it. You got to get them to buy into being great teammates. The only people on the field that are going to be able to do things are your fellow teammates. Me and my assistant coaches score no goals. We take no shots. We can do nothing else on the field besides try to help them through and guide them through the season. So getting them to bond together and create a positive team culture is one of those first things we're really focused on. And it took a little time for them to buy in, but now that we're 4 years in, I think they've done a great job of establishing that culture. And we really talk about basically as teammates, how do you leave that uniform in a better place? There's always going to be somebody that wore that uniform before you. And it's going to be important for you to realize everybody that joins this team gets a uniform, but what you do with that uniform is fully up to you. And what you leave as your legacy is fully up to what you do on the field and how you interact with your teammates and how you are as a person. Ultimately, we're just trying to make them better humans, get them better prepared to deal with life. And part of that comes through experiencing the joys of lacrosse and having some fun out on the field.
Yeah, and Emma, I'm sure you can speak on this as well, but you just, Coach, before we started talking, you were speaking so highly of this group. You said you kind of grew up with them. You've had them for such a long time. What does that bond mean? And how do you really build that bond with the players and, make it a family?
Yeah, so I started coaching these girls when they were in middle school. So I was actually the middle school teacher to start, middle school coach, So in 7th grade, I had these girls, the girls before. So I had a chance to really see them step up and start to play a slightly higher level of lacrosse. So it's just an opportunity for me just to build those relationships with players. So I know them really well. I know a lot of the parents too. I've seen them play. G is now thinking about that. What is that? that's more than 6 years, right? So I think the real key to it is just getting to be comfortable with who they are, understanding what their roles are in the team, and then just seeing them blossom. I mean, you have this whole growth period of just going through middle school that can be so awkward. They're really learning how their bodies work. They get out there, they start to figure it out, they grow, they get better, they become better athletes and better people. So just seeing them blossom into seniors now, that 2024 class is amazing to watch. And really it comes down to those relationships that they have together as teammates, and realizing that, when it comes to the season, we're really doing it for the seniors. We always put that first. The seniors should come first in terms of trying to make the season the best it can possibly be for them, because they're never going to know when their last game is, right? You could have anything that takes you out of your last game. Could be an injury, could be a playoff game where you think you're in it and it just doesn't go well, and that's your last game. So they need to try to enjoy every minute that they have out there and be the best they can be.
Yeah, Coach Emma, do you have anything else to add to that? You, obviously had a great group of Lawrence Tech girls come through this past season, but you also coached at the high school level. What do you have to add?
Yeah, I think everything that coach is saying is absolutely correct. And I think at this point in the season, different coaches have different messages, but I really do think, making the most of the opportunity that's given to you is a critical message to get out to these young athletes, and, making sure that every single day that we don't take what we do for granted, and go out there and work your hardest and try your best. And, hopefully the chips fall your way, but sometimes it doesn't. And, those are the lessons that we learn in sports. What I'm curious about, obviously you guys have a really great 2024 group, including Kylie, who's one of my more favorite goalies in the state. Who else are you going to lean on heading into the rest of the postseason?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. On that senior side of it, we have some really, really solid seniors. So besides Kylie, we have Emma Kincaid, 2024. So she is a defender. She's committed to Kent State. Just a phenomenal athlete, great player. One of those ones I can put her just about anywhere in the field. If I need her to go ahead and play some mid, she can play mid. She can play defense. She can pop in and play attack. She's mostly been on that defensive side of the ball, though. That's where she often is most comfortable. Besides Emma, I also have another really great senior too that also plays defense, Abigail Brooks. She's been a 4-year player of mine, just extremely athletic all over the field. She's one of those girls I can put out there and put on anyone. So between those two, those are part of the tandem I put on that draw circle. I also have a great other player that's a senior too, Paige Ide, that does a really good job of popping into different roles for us, very flexible. She's also a cross-country runner, so if I need her at mid, she'll hop in at mid. Besides that, I have just a phenomenal sophomore, Abby Russell, who's just doing a bang-up job on the draw circle. She's just extremely athletic, really good on the field, great teammate, can really get things done, whether that's working with the teammates to try to set things up, or even trying to just make things happen. So offensively, she's one of those big pieces. Then I also have just a stellar freshman in Colette Charcot. So she is really just had a breakout year. She's the second highest scorer on my team. Just a phenomenal athlete too. Done a great job of stepping in and really working to play hard with the offensive side of the ball. Just helping set things up. Just having those types of threats on the field is really key. Having those kinds of relationships and making them work together is really, really helpful. So I think like the defensive side is probably a little bit more stronger since we really only have one senior on the offensive side of the ball. So it's meant this year has been more challenging at times with that chemistry, but as we built that chemistry, they've gotten better. So those are the players I'm really looking at that have really stepped it up as the season goes through. There's countless others too, but I think those are the big ones I'd start with.
Yeah, and Coach Emma, you mentioned it. Having your daughter on the team, being able to coach her, Kylie, what is that like? What's the dynamic like? Just how special is it to share that bond with her?
Yeah, I think it's been amazing for me to see it. I know for her, it's probably been at sometimes amazing, but a mixed bag, right? You never get away from your coach in some respects. But I've loved the aspect that I've had a chance to see her grow as a person on the field, as a player. She gets the chance to kind of see how the secret sauce is made for what we do all the time that goes into coaching. I think it gives her a completely different appreciation for what happens behind the scenes to make everything happen, all the time and effort that goes into it. And from my perspective, it's been just, like I said, great to see her blossom into that role. She's improved every year. She's been going through it. It's always a little bit more nerve-wracking when you're a goalie dad, just watching the plays unfold. It's a little bit different if my daughter was a midfielder or an attacker, she misses a shot. Yeah, it doesn't really affect you the same way. But it's one of those ones where I've seen her make some incredible plays, have some great games. She's kept us in so many different games. It's been amazing to watch her just continue to improve. And then seeing her go on after high school to play is going to be a lot of fun as well. So from my perspective, it's been one of those little joys. You don't often get to see it from that close up on the field. Getting a chance to see her work with that defensive unit and then the rest of the team to try to build things out and make things happen has just been phenomenal to watch.
Yeah, absolutely love it. You guys gearing up to play Saginaw Heritage in the regional semifinals on Wednesday. What's the energy on the team been like? What's the feel at practice? What are we getting from the group?
Yeah, I think the energy is really high right now. They tend to love the playoff season. We put a lot of time and effort in trying to hone our skills as we get into it. It really comes down a lot to the details and what you do. That makes all the difference in the world for how you do in those playoff games. So we're trying to bring a combination of keeping it fun for them, keeping them engaged. It's really hard as the school year comes to a close for a lot of these players to stay focused. So we're putting a good combination of new things in front of them and then just trying to hone those other areas and still trying to keep it fun, right? So it's a little bit of a mix, but getting them to realize that they have to lock in and get the work done. Otherwise, your playoff season doesn't end the way that you want to. And I think that's an area that they're really taking to heart. They're really spending a lot of time to work on and just ensuring that it's going to be a good playoff run. They've been here before, so it's not their first time. Now it's just building off those previous experiences and making it happen.
Yeah, I mean, personally, I think that's huge, the experience factor. And obviously, with your senior group that you have and being kind of in that scenario last year is really going to lend itself, I think, to success, in this postseason. So, yeah, it's really exciting to see how you guys are going to do. And, I've been there, obviously, keeping that group energized and locked in when there's all sorts of graduations and, senior things happening, and summer break is right around the corner. So, my heart goes out to you, and you're doing a great job with that.
Yeah,
Thank
good
you.
luck, Coach. We'll be rooting for you, and we just thank you so much for taking some time today. We appreciate it.
Yep, thanks for having me on.
Thanks. Hey, all the best of luck to that Hazlitt team. They were so much fun to watch. They've been so much fun to watch this season, and we'll be rooting them on, that's for sure. So we want to take some time to break down some of these regional matchups. Grand Rapids Catholic Central is going to be taking on East Grand Rapids tonight, and these teams obviously have some history. They played each other just last week, and Grand Rapids Catholic Central got the 2010 win. So what's going to need to happen this time around for East Grand Rapids to really pull through and keep their season alive?
Yeah, so it was a really big goal differential in their last game. However, their first meeting in the season, I believe it was only a 4-goal game. And one thing you never want to count out is EGR when it comes to the postseason. Last year, in my experience, the regular season is one game, and then they get to postseason, and they've been there a million times, so they know what they're doing. I think. It's all going to come down to scouting report and X's and O's and making sure, again, the girls are dialed in. And, even if Grand Rapids Catholic Central comes out firing, realize that it's the game of lacrosse and it's a high scoring game. So trying to stick with them if that is the case. I do think, again, Grand Rapids Catholic Central is the juggernaut this year. They are the team to beat, and they are crushing everyone in their path. So it's going to be a test, but it is also really hard to beat a team 3 times. So I think there's that factor in it. But it's Grand Rapids Catholic is having a stellar season, so it's going to be a really big test for EGR.
Yeah, absolutely. And not just coming into the playoffs, but they might have revenge from earlier in the season that they want to come out and just, get their take. How difficult, though, is it going to be for any team to beat this Grand Rapids Catholic Central group?
It's going to be tough. And again, it's they just have really talented, really great athletes across the board on their team. And I think they have really figured out what works best for them, in terms of their offensive schemes. Their draw control unit is doing a huge job in terms of getting and gaining possession. And then obviously they have kind of a new defensive scheme this year with the zone that they're running. So, I think every team is beatable, especially when it comes to tournament time. But, they've proved themselves this year. So it's going to be a tough test for EGR. But on the flip side, I think if there's any team out there that has a really great chance, it is EGR. They've, as I said earlier, they've been to the postseason so many times and have played against stellar teams so many times that, don't ever count them out, because they will come at you.
Yeah, this will be a huge matchup. We're super excited to see how that one turns out. Northville, they took on Livonia United, and Northville got the win 14-10, a close one in that one. But what did you like from this Northville team in this matchup?
I think Northville is really figuring it out right now. Again, they've had a really strong season thus far. I've always been jealous of the depth that they have on their bench, and I think right now coach is really putting together the right units. They have some really young talent on the team, bolstered by a senior keeper who's having a phenomenal season as well. So, I think it's just going to be a matter of relying on their athleticism, playing clean. But I'm really excited about this Northville team. I think they're really, as I said, putting it together. They're developing as a program, and I think they're kind of putting their foot through the door in terms of getting to that next level of being, kind of one of the top tier teams in Michigan. And they certainly have the depth within the younger ranks to support that development. So really excited about this group.
Yeah, absolutely. So important for them moving forward. Hey, next up, they're going to be taking on Salem next week. What do you expect from that matchup, and do you think that they'll be able to continue their season?
I do. I think Northville has the edge in that group. I think they have a little bit more balance when it comes to their team. Salem has a phenomenal senior in a Syracuse commit, Melina Cotter. But I think Northville has a few more options to go to. And again, they have that depth that, will make any coach jealous. So, I do think Northville has the edge, but again, it's tournament time, so never say never.
Absolutely. Anything can happen, and we're so excited to see what these matchups bring, what teams get to move forward. It's so exciting, best time of the year. So thank you so much for joining us on the farm. Go back, relax, have fun, and we're going to kick it to Sean.
Thank you very much, ladies. Great job all season. Appreciated greatly. And we appreciate our friends at Warrior. Warrior's got your back. They're the best in the business. Look at some of this gear right in front of you. Warrior's always going to take care of you, give you the best stuff in the business. I got the best coach in the business right there. How cheesy is that? But I'm going with it.
Very much so.
Coach Durham from Orchard Lake St. Mary's kindly joining us. Another edition of Face Off here. Coach, I got to say this. You've been saying since week 1 this year that DCD was the real deal. I don't think they have to have anybody talk them up any longer. Their play's doing all the talking.
No, they are definitely probably the top team in Division II. We already said this before. I just don't see anybody beating them. They're dominant. They're athletic. They have a great defense. They have a great goalie. They have a couple outstanding attackmen. They have middies. They have it all, and they're young. And they're positive. They have a great team. They're physical. They ride really well, and they dominated. We played them last night. They dominated the game. Kudos to Coach Garland. He's a great coach and his staff, and they did a great job. I just don't see anybody beating them down the line. I mean, somebody could give them a scare, but if they keep playing the way they are, I don't foresee any issues for them.
Some interesting stuff in D1. We'll get to our rankings in just a minute, but certainly DCC still on top. I know a lot of people out there are really intrigued at one of the matchups coming up. And just so you know, we're taping this Thursday, so there are some matchups that are going to happen between now and then. But I know a lot of people are looking at that Battle of Birmingham.
Yeah, I think the Rice-Birmingham game is kind of unique. They did play early in the year, and I think Rice got the best of them. But, Rice is banged up a little bit. They're not struggling, so to speak, because they find somebody else to fill a spot. But Seaholm's playing really well. So when Birmingham is playing well, their kids are fired up. That game will be played at Seaholm. I mean, they'll be the visitor because it's Rice has the number 1 seed, but Birmingham has a chance here. And I remember back when I coached in Birmingham, they were the last team before Heartland to win the state championship, and they beat Rice, and that was one of the big things. And that's when Aaron Frank was the head coach then, who's now the AD at Seaholm. But some of those things it's just a rivalry. It's a crosstown thing. There's kids that live in Birmingham that go to Rice. It's just going to be a great game. And Seaholm has some great players as well on their roster. So I expect some great stuff.
Well, as we mentioned, as you take a look at the regional finals, we are doing this before some of these regional finals and before we know who these regional champs are. So 2 things are going to change between now and next week. Number 1, the top 10, Coach Durham and a few of the coaches out there putting together this top 10, and more on the player of the year list in a second. But Coach, first, why don't we look at this top 10?
So there's not any changes for the for Division I, Division II combined, because nobody's lost.
Yep.
All these teams they're continuing on their paths. They're all in the playoffs. They're all in their own regions pretty much. Like I said, I'm looking forward to some games coming up, but CC is going to dominate. Rice is still the number 1 seed in Division I, and Country Day is still the number 1 seed in Division II. So their path is probably going to be a little bit simpler, though there's going to be some great. I think when it gets down to the semifinals, there's going to be some great games, and I'm looking forward to that. And it's going to be about 10 days or so until we see that, or 2 weeks. So hopefully that we get there, and I'll be out there, and we should see some great stuff.
Now, before we reveal the Warrior Player of the Year list, I need to tell you, next week we are going to lock our top 10. And, of course, that includes locking in something we've said all year, our leading vote getter. That is where you can come in. You control that. Get out, mount up for your guy, make your voice be heard. As I mentioned, the leading vote getter, the online winner, is never, ever, ever removed from our list. Coach, we said there was going to be a change. There's one change this week, and I have a feeling there might be some more changes before we lock that list next week.
It's really tough and there's really tough choices by the committee, because a lot of these guys on the list continuously play well and they're dominating, and that's what's keeping them there. So if they continue to do well, especially in the regional finals and then the quarterfinals, I don't see anybody really disappearing. So if they can keep that up, it's great. But there are some other guys that should be on there. Unfortunately, we only have 10 spots. So let's see what happens in the next week. Committee will make some decisions. We're going to get some stats. We're going to get some breakdown, do some analytics, and we'll put the right guys in place. So,
and a chance to remind you again, we are going to lock that top 10 next week. So still an opportunity for a player out there to kick his way onto our list, and an opportunity for you, the viewer, to make sure that your guy, if he wins the online vote, gets that bump and automatically goes into the Final Four. There is our criteria. We've used that same criteria for years here on the State Champs Network for all of our competitions. Best of luck to everybody out there. Again, next week's going to be interesting. We lock that list. Speaking of interesting, Coach, there are so many great matchups coming up. Before we get out of here for this edition of Face Off, let's take a look at some of the matchups that people might be looking at.
So in Division I, there's only 3 games that we know of right now. As we're taping today, there's still games to be played Thursday and Friday to finish up the second round of the playoffs, the semifinals, so to speak. And then we'll have more matchups as we go. But If you notice in Division II, there's a lot more because most of those games are finished. But the games I really like I said, I like the Rice-Birmingham game. I think that Brighton, Ann Arbor Pioneer beat a really good Salem team last night. Tough loss for Salem. They had a great season, by the way. Kudos to their season because they turned that whole team around from last year. But losing a tough game like that to Ann Arbor Pioneer. But, there's a couple other games. Hazlett's playing Tecumseh. Tecumseh's been there. They've always been. I had to play them in the regional final a couple years ago. This is a solid program out in the middle of Tecumseh, not anywhere near anybody else. But Hazlitt, they're a solid team. They have really good defense. They have a nice young coach. I see some things, and that's pretty much on that area right there. Those are the 2-3 games that I would keep an eye on.
Really looking forward to it. As we mentioned, best of luck to everybody out there. You're still playing for a reason, and you can punch your ticket, obviously, even further. Best of luck to all the individuals out there. Still an opportunity for you to make a late statement, make a name for yourself to the committee, and be a part of our Warrior Player of the Year list. That's all the time we have for today. For Coach Durham, my name is Sean Baligian. Thanks, as always, for joining us here on Faceoff on the State Champs Network.
State Champs Faceoff and The Draw is presented by Lawrence Technological University. Be curious, make magic. Faceoff and The Draw is also brought to you by the Michigan High School Athletic Association, promoting the value and values of educational athletics. The Michigan Army National Guard, a proud sponsor of the MHSAA. Warrior Lacrosse, Michigan-based, Michigan-built. Visit warrior.com. And the Detroit Athletic Club Foundation's Michigan High School Male and Female Athlete of the Year Award.